arrived, and a focus this morning is on security that's sweeping the country. Federal investigators are interviewing Muslims Americans ahead of the voting over alleged threats of terrorist attacks. This is according to reports. The Council on American-Islamic Relations says that Muslims were questioned in California, Washington, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and Florida. Joining us right now is Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Institute of World Politics professor and the author of Defeating Jihad. Dr. Gorka, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Maria.
I want to get your reaction to that, as well as this idea that ISIS has promised that they want to see attacks on this election day. What's your take on all of this?
Well, first things first, I like to disregard anything that comes out of CAIR, the Council for American-Islamic Relations, because they don't represent Muslims, and they're actually linked to the Muslim Brotherhood in one of the biggest federal cases in U.S. history. That's the Holy Land Foundation trial. But I have to note here, in the 124 ISIS terrorist cases that we have successfully executed in the last 2.5 years here in America, it was a very small fraction of those cases where it was the Muslim community that helped us track down those terrorists. In fact, it was less than 25%. Most of them were located through their use of the internet. So there is a problem here, and the fact that the FBI interviewed members of the Muslim community really doesn't surprise me, Maria.
All right, that's a really important point that you're making there. Now, Dr. Gorka, we heard last week and yesterday that ISIS is calling on all of its followers across the world to attack Americans on Election Day. We know that both presidential candidates are holding their parties in New York City tonight. The NYPD has been increasingly tighter security, and yesterday city officials briefed the public on security protocols. Listen to this.
Election Day in New York City brings with it a very unique set of challenges. For the first time in modern memory, both major party candidates for president will monitor the results here in New York. In addition to securing the over 1,000 polling sites around the 5 boroughs all day, we also have 2 large venues, the Jacob Javits Center and the New York Hilton Hotel to safeguard as well. There are many ways we'll be keeping you safe. There will be much the public will see and much the public will not see.
Bottom line for all New Yorkers is expect to see a lot of NYPD presence today and tomorrow, and we'll be working very closely with our federal partners.
Dr. Gorka, should Americans feel concerned about potential threats like ISIS?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The war is real, the war is here. Remember, just a matter of a few weeks ago, really, we had the multiple attacks, the pressure cooker bomb detonation in New York and the pipe bombs detonated in New Jersey. We know that almost 20 plots have been attempted against New York since September the 11th. And on top of that, we know that the jihadis like symbolic dates. 9/11 itself was the anniversary of a 17th century defeat against Muslim forces outside Vienna. So an election day is absolutely a very seductive target, potential target for the jihadis.
So, Dr. Gorka, I'm really curious. In the last, I don't know, 6 weeks, we've seen the polls have shifted. It used to be terrorism, national security, Donald Trump won. Now, Hillary Clinton is getting higher marks on terrorism, and some polls are at least neck and neck. What do you say to that?
Look, I'm always very skeptical about polls. You look at the recent failures with Brexit, an utter slap in the face for all pollsters. I truly believe, I'm biased because this is what I do for a living, but I truly believe that the majority of Americans, when they go into that booth today, they'll be thinking primarily about national security. They're going to look at those 2 candidates and they're going to ask themselves, which one of these makes me feel safer for myself and my family? Is it a woman who was responsible for Benghazi, the disaster in Syria, so on and so forth, or is it a man who really is quite unequivocal about the fact that we are at war and who wants to destroy groups like ISIS? So for me, I really think it's still about national security for most Americans.
And Sebastian, it's Dagan, McDowell. Just one really quick last thing. But people tend to vote on emotion if there has been a recent terror attack, and that kind of goes to And I mean, make no point with this, but again, it's like if it's fresh in their minds, then they tend to favor Donald Trump.
No, I agree, and I think this is one of the things the Democrats are very good on. They don't argue based on logic. They try and use emotion instead. That's why I think Donald Trump has given Hillary such a run for her money, because he knows how to tap into that. He knows how to tap into anger and insecurity. What's
the most important difference between these two campaigns in terms of their national security stance?
The biggest one is that Hillary will continue the Obama administration's platform. So you look at her refusal to use words like jihadism, that's just going to be a continuation of the disastrous last 8 years. Donald Trump, on the other hand, you know, I've met with this man, we've talked national security issues. Right. He knows we are at war, and he wants to win. So that's a huge difference.
Dr. Gorka, good to see you. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for your insights.